He should not have said it out loud. But once the words left his mouth, there was no taking them back. 3 years. No, I can't do it. The air between us froze, heavier than the glass chandelier above, heavier than the quiet tension of a room full of invisible expectations. She stared at me, eyes sharp, gray-green like the storm-tossed sea, waiting for me to blink, to fold, to crumble like everyone else in her life. I didn't. I couldn't. It wasn't just a refusal. It was a choice that could unravel lives. A billionaire's empire balanced on a ledger of my moral code. $50 million. A legal marriage contract. 3 years. And I said no. I was just a man with $17 in my wallet, calloused hands, and a daughter whose laughter was the only compass I had left in the world. And I just told the richest woman in Manhattan that her entire plan, the future she had been groomed for, wasn't going to work. She opened her mouth, and the words caught halfway. Then she closed it again, a calculated pause, like the pause before a high-stakes negotiation. Except this wasn't a negotiation. This was truth laid bare. You're refusing me? Yes. My voice shook, not from fear, but because I felt the weight of what she was offering. Not just money, but safety for my daughter, a chance to breathe without counting pennies. A golden bridge to a life I had only dreamed of. And I still said no. Her hands tightened on the contract folder, the paper crisp, clean, as if it could never hold the chaos it represented. She had been trained to control, to command, to bend situations to her will. She had not been trained for honesty, and honesty was exactly what she was staring at. "You know what this means?" she whispered, almost to herself. Her eyes weren't angry. Not yet. They were sharp, calculating, dangerous. I did. Every calculation, every possibility, every outcome that could spill from this decision pressed against my chest like a steel cage. Every principle I had fought to uphold, every promise to my daughter, every memory of the woman I loved and lost 3 years ago, it all pressed me to the edge of reason. And still, I sat there. Still, I held my ground, because no matter what she could offer, no matter the gold-lined future she could build for us, no amount of money could make me compromise what I had promised myself the night I buried my wife. I would not sell my honesty. I would not sell Mia's understanding of what was right. I would not sell the only life I knew how to protect. She leaned back slightly, exhaling the kind of quiet power that could collapse empires. Her voice softened, just enough to cut through the fear, the awe, the tension that filled the room. "So," she said, almost casually, "you're saying this isn't about the money." I swallowed. It never was. And in that instant, everything shifted. Not the room, not the money, not the contract, but us. The world we had each built in isolation, the life of a girl with scraped knees and midnight giggles, and the life of a woman who had been groomed to control billions, collided. Not with a crash, but with the subtle, dangerous pull of two unprepared hearts realizing that honesty can be more powerful than gold. She watched me, really watched me, in a way no one ever had, and I watched her, noticing the cracks in the armor, the weariness beneath the perfection, the silent question behind her polished eyes. Who would bend first, or would we both break? I didn't know yet, but I did know one thing. Tonight, the wrong table wasn't the mistake. It was the beginning. The first time I saw her really see me, it was across a table I never should have been sitting at. I shouldn't have been there. My foreman never sent me to a 3-star restaurant with linen napkins folded like origami swans. My jeans had cement dust on the knees. My flannel shirt smelled of sawdust and wet rain. And yet, somehow, I was there. She didn't push me out. She didn't glare. She just watched. Her eyes calculating, curious, dangerous. And when she finally spoke, her words weren't a demand. They were a test. "You're not Jonathan." No, I wasn't. I wasn't anyone she expected. I wasn't a hedge fund heir, a board-approved suitor, a pawn in her family's meticulously planned empire. I was a man who built walls with his hands for a living, who counted pennies to make sure his daughter ate, and she was a woman who counted billions to make the world bend to her will. Neither am I, she admitted after a pause, and that tiny confession shifted the air between us. Not because it was dramatic, but because she allowed herself to be real. For a moment, the table, the silverware, the chandeliers, they didn't matter. Only that moment, only honesty. The wine arrived. She ordered it with a casual authority, as if pouring billions into accounts was nothing compared to the act of pouring a glass of liquid. I followed her lead, feeling like a man holding someone else's life in my untrained hands. I didn't drink wine, I drank beer, sometimes soda, but the glass she set before me glowed like temptation. I took a sip. Bitter, smooth, expensive, wrong, perfect. "Tell me," she said, leaning slightly forward. Her tone wasn't soft. It was insistent, precise, probing without cruelty. "What do you do, Mr. Reed?" "Construction, mostly drywall, framing, whatever needs doing." She nodded slowly, as if she were reading blueprints in my soul, mapping out my life line by line. Then her eyes flicked to my phone, the little glowing screen still showing my daughter's face from our call earlier. "Mia," she whispered, and it wasn't a question. It was a recognition. "Yes," I said softly. "She's 7, my daughter, calls me every night. I don't miss it." Her fingers traced the rim of her glass. "She's lucky," she said. And it wasn't flattery. It wasn't a business compliment. It was an acknowledgement of everything I fought to protect. The conversation turned then, slowly, deliberately, to the things we never voiced to strangers. My wife's death. The hospital bills. The nights I stayed awake, hands shaking, praying Mia would sleep and forget the loss she could not understand. The relentless grind of survival. The pride that refused to let me take handouts. And she listened. Really listened. Her corporate armor remained, but I glimpsed something beneath it. A shadow of the girl she had been before the billions, before the board, before the contracts and power games. Then she leaned back, letting a small, deliberate silence settle between us. "I have an idea," she said, almost casually. But her eyes weren't casual. They were sharp, calculating, alive. I should have known, right then, that nothing in her world was ever casual. "I want to hire you." I blinked. "What?" "I want to hire you to marry me. Not as a joke, not as a test, as a statement, as an expectation." I laughed, nervously. "You're serious?" She nodded. No smile, no apology, just a clarity that made every bone in my body tense. "Yes, I choose you, not Jonathan. Not any of the board-approved candidates. You." The words hit harder than any construction hammer I'd ever lifted. My mind raced. $50 million. Security for Mia. A home. Tuition. Freedom from the endless struggle. And yet, the weight pressed down on me like a wall of steel. "I can't," I whispered. Not because I didn't understand, but because I could. Not without betraying something sacred. Not without telling my daughter that integrity has a price. Not without convincing myself that a lie could be the foundation of a life I promised to protect. She watched me, silently, and in that silence, I saw the real risk. The way her trust, her control, and everything she had ever believed in depended on my answer. And I knew, in a way that terrified me, that saying no might cost her everything. "Then say yes," she said softly, almost vulnerable, almost human. "Or I lose everything." I didn't answer. I couldn't, not yet. Because this wasn't just about money. This wasn't just about power or control or boardrooms and contracts. This was about morality, love, trust. A promise I had made to a little girl who deserved a father who could keep his word. And I knew something then I hadn't realized before. That night at the restaurant, the wrong table, the unexpected conversation, the way she had let herself be real. It had been the first time either of us had seen the other for who we truly were. And it had changed everything. For all her money, her power, her carefully constructed life, she couldn't buy honesty. She couldn't buy a choice made with love, with integrity, with the kind of courage that had nothing to do with gold. I leaned back, letting the silence stretch, the tension thrum between us like an electric current. She didn't move, she didn't blink, and I realized something I had known for years but never voiced aloud. There's some things in life money can't touch. Some things are priceless. And that night, sitting across from her, in a chair that probably cost more than my apartment, sipping wine I had no right to drink, I realized I was about to test that truth. Because even if I said no, even if I walked away, the world we'd created for 2 hours would never let me go. Not really. Not Claire. Not Mia. Not the weight of what was at stake. And for the first time since Elena died, I wasn't sure if the right choice was the safe one or the honest one. I held the contract folder like it was a live grenade. Every line of legal text screamed power, influence, and temptation. $50 million. 3 years. An arrangement to secure Mia's future. A promise of comfort I had never imagined I'd see. And still, I felt the weight of it like chains around my chest. Claire watched me across the table, gray-green eyes, unreadable, calculating. She didn't lean forward. She didn't soften. She waited. The silence was louder than any argument, more pressing than any demand. "You understand what I'm asking," she said quietly, her hands folded in front of her. 3 years. My life, your daughter, appearances, duties, everything managed and observed. And in exchange, $50 million. I nodded, my throat tight. I could feel her gaze boring into me, and for a moment I thought she might see through me, past the construction boots, past the sawdust and cement, straight to the man who had promised to raise his daughter with integrity. "I do," I said finally. "I understand. And I can't." Her fingers tightened on her glass. "No, you can't, or you won't." "Won't," I said, and it was louder than I intended. My voice carried the weight of every night I had worried about rent, groceries, Mia's school supplies. Every moment I had taught her honesty, every promise I had made to her mother. I won't build her future on a lie. Quote. Her shoulders tensed, but there was no anger in her eyes, only calculation and something else. Fear, maybe, or disappointment, maybe both. "You're aware," she said slowly, "that saying no will change everything, not just for me, for the company, for the board, for me." I did. I understood completely. Her world was meticulous. Every decision accounted for, every action a strategic move. One refusal could collapse years of planning. But I also understood something else. Some things can't be calculated. Some things can't be bought. "You don't know what you're giving up," she whispered, almost to herself. Then her eyes locked with mine. "Everything I've built, everything my family expects, it could all crumble tomorrow because of your choice." And still, I didn't flinch. I didn't apologize. I didn't fold. I simply said, "I know exactly what I'm giving up, and I know exactly what I'm keeping." The silence stretched again, thick and heavy, until she finally leaned back and exhaled. "You really mean that?" she said. "After everything I'm offering, you choose this?" Quote. "Yes," I said, "because what I give my daughter and what I give myself that has no price." For a long moment she said nothing. Then she did something that surprised me. She smiled. Not a polite corporate smile, not a trained boardroom smile, a real smile, fleeting, hesitant, human. "You're a fool," she said softly. "Maybe," I admitted. "And yet," she continued, "you're exactly the man I need." Her words hit me like a hammer, not because they were flattering, but because they carried truth. I was unpolished, unprepared, out of place, but I was real. And real was something she hadn't encountered in years. 3 days later, the world shifted again. I was working on a renovation in Brooklyn when her call came. Claire's voice was tight, controlled, urgent. "Noah, the board has moved the vote up. Friday morning, if I don't show a fiancé, they replace me." My stomach dropped. Every principle, every moral decision from the past weeks now pressed against a deadline I hadn't expected. She wasn't asking anymore. She was depending on me. "Where are you?" I asked. "Home. Apartment. I need you there tonight." I dropped my tools, ignoring the confused calls from my crew. Every step back to the subway was heavy, with urgency, fear, and a strange sense of inevitability. I arrived at her penthouse, passing the same security, the same pristine lobby, and stepped into a world of glass and steel. She was there, waiting, calm despite everything. But the tension in her shoulders betrayed her. "You understand," she said, "that this isn't just for appearances. This is to protect me, to protect the company, to maintain control long enough to salvage something. You could prevent disaster, 3,000 employees, sustainable tech projects, everything my family has built." I nodded, feeling the crushing weight of moral responsibility pressing alongside personal principles. She handed me the folder again. The contract glowed in the dim light. Terms, stipulations, clauses, meticulously drawn to protect both of us, but designed to entangle our lives. "50 million, she said. "Your daughter's future, your comfort, all of it. 3 years, and you can walk away unharmed after that. Legally protected, financially secure, but you have to say yes." I looked down at the contract, the glossy weight of impossible choice resting on my lap. I thought of Mia's face, her trust, her laughter, the promises I'd made to her mother. And I realized something I hadn't admitted before. No amount of money could buy that. I can't," I said. And in that moment, I knew it wasn't the money. It was everything else. The life I had promised to preserve. The honesty I had promised myself. The integrity I could not surrender. She exhaled slowly, her jaw tight, eyes flicking to the skyline beyond her window. "Then, you're saying no. After all of this, you're still saying no." "Yes," I said, "I'm saying no." A sharp exhale. She turned to me, and for the first time in weeks, I saw vulnerability, pure, raw, unguarded. "Do you understand what you just did?" I did. I understood more than she realized. I had chosen morality over security, love over gold, truth over convenience. And in doing so, I had changed everything, not just for her, but for myself and for my daughter. She didn't argue. She didn't plead. She simply nodded, a ghost of a smile, sad but accepting. "Then I guess we see who we really are now," she said softly, and we did. For the first time, the billionaire CEO and the single father from Queens were equal. Not in money, not in power, but in the courage it took to choose principle over gain, honesty over comfort, love over contracts. The world outside continued, indifferent, but inside that apartment, everything shifted. A decision had been made, and nothing, no amount of gold, no threat from a board, no fear of losing a company could undo it. Because some choices, no matter how painful, are worth standing by. The next morning, the city didn't feel any different, but my world did. I walked through Queens, boots heavy, hands clenched, replaying the conversation from Claire's penthouse. $50 million. A future for Mia that could have erased every worry, every sleepless night, every moment we'd struggled to make ends meet. And I had said no. It should have terrified me. And it did. But more than fear, there was a strange clarity, a sense of alignment I hadn't felt in years. Every choice I'd made, every promise to Elena, every late night comforting Mia while I counted pennies, led me here. I wasn't perfect, I wasn't rich, I wasn't powerful, but I was honest, and I was human, and for now, that was enough. When I got to the construction site, the crew barely noticed me. Hammers clanged, sawdust hung in the air, orders shouted in half Spanish, half English. Normal, familiar, comforting. And yet, all I could think about was Claire. About her face when I said no. About the moment she had realized that her board, her father, and the world couldn't control me, couldn't buy me, couldn't force my conscience to bend. By mid-morning, her call came. "Noah," she said, voice tight but softer than before. I resigned. I froze. My stomach dropped. What? The board moved the vote up. I chose to resign rather than compromise myself. rather than accept a marriage contract that felt wrong. I didn't have time to wait for a yes from you, and honestly, I think I would have accepted anyway if it had meant keeping the company, but I can't. I just can't. I wanted to say something, anything, but the words lodged in my throat. Her voice trembled ever so slightly, the only crack in her armor I had ever heard. I wanted you to know, she continued, because whatever happens next, whatever I lose, I needed to be honest. I needed someone to understand that this wasn't about money. Not really. It was about trust. I swallowed hard. Claire, You don't need to say anything. I know what you chose, and I respect it. Even as she said it, I could feel the weight of what she had given up pressing down on her. A company, billions, her legacy, all gone in a heartbeat. And yet, she was lighter. Somehow. Freed from the expectations, the constant calculations, the roles she had been forced to play her entire life. 3 days later, she appeared at our apartment. Just Claire. No suit, no boardroom, no power play. Jeans, sneakers, a soft sweater. Hair loose, not polished. Nervous, unsure, human. Mia spotted her first. Daddy, she's here! I held her hand tight, not because I was afraid, but because I wanted to see what would happen when Claire met my daughter without contracts or obligations or money on the line. Claire crouched, coming to Mia's level. Hi, Mia. I'm Claire. Your dad's told me a lot about you. Mia stared for a moment, then smiled. I like you. I wanted to laugh at how simple, honest, and terrifying that judgment was. Claire smiled nervously. I like you too, she said softly. The first Saturday afternoons became a ritual. Park visits, pizza, conversations that didn't have agendas, Mia's laughter filling the air. Claire sitting cross-legged on the bench, listening, engaging, forgetting the empire she had walked away from for the first time in years. I watched her interact with Mia and realized something profound. For the first time, Clare Harrington wasn't a CEO. She was a person, a woman. A human capable of mistakes, of fun, of joy, of connection. And she was discovering that she liked being that person. One afternoon, after Mia had dashed off to the swings, Claire and I sat quietly on the park bench, the city noise a soft hum around us. I never realized, she said quietly, how suffocating it was, all of it. The money, the expectations, the decisions. I thought control meant freedom, but it doesn't. It never did. I nodded, understanding completely. I know that feeling, but you get a chance to see what real freedom feels like now. She leaned back, eyes tracing the skyline. It's terrifying. I don't know who I am without it. You'll figure it out, I said gently, and you're not alone. A week later, we went to Sal's for pizza. The tiny pizzeria, the smell of baking bread, the clatter of trays and laughter. It was chaotic, imperfect, human. Claire was in her element, laughing at Mia's ridiculous stories, getting flour on her sweater as she tried to help pass a plate. No protocol, no boardroom, no contracts, just life. Mia, of course, had decided that Claire was now part of the family. Can Claire come over for Christmas? She asked, with absolute certainty. Claire froze, glanced at me, unsure. I shrugged. I think she's earned it. Claire smiled, genuinely, letting herself feel the warmth of acceptance. I'd like that, she said softly. And in that moment, I realized something I hadn't admitted to myself before. This wasn't about contracts, money, or business. This was about trust, connection, and the fragile, beautiful human moments we fight so hard to protect. For the first time since Elena died, I felt a flicker of hope. Not just for Mia, not just for me, but for all of us. That even when the world tries to calculate and control everything, there are things it can't touch, things worth holding on to. Claire, for the first time, wasn't a CEO. She was just Claire. And somehow, that made all the difference. Christmas in Queens was quiet, dusted with snow that turned streets into glittering veins before the plows turned it gray again. I spent the morning preparing pancakes with Mia, chocolate chip and shaped like dinosaurs. She chattered constantly, full of energy and questions, her eyes sparkling like tiny stars. "You're nervous," she said as I wiped the counter for the third time. "I'm not nervous," I lied. "I'm preparing." She raised an eyebrow. "Preparing? For what?" Before I could answer, the buzzer rang. Claire's voice came through the speaker. "It's me." I opened the door, and there she was. Jeans, oversized sweater, sneakers, carrying 2 heavy shopping bags. Her hair was pulled back, casual, human. "Merry Christmas," she said, slightly breathless. Mia ran to her, arms wide. "You came!" Claire crouched to meet her at eye level. "Of course I came," she said. "And I brought presents." It was strange, surreal, seeing the woman who commanded boardrooms, controlled billions, now laughing on the floor of our tiny apartment, helping unwrap gifts with a 7-year-old who didn't yet understand the weight of her presence. We spent the afternoon together, Noah cooking, Claire helping when she could, Mia narrating everything she did. Claire burned the green beans twice, laughed at herself, and for the first time in years, wasn't worried about image or performance. She just existed, messy and human, and it felt right. Later, we settled on the couch with hot chocolate and marshmallows. Home Alone played on the small TV. Mia nestled between us, eyes wide with excitement, while Claire watched her, not the screen. "I never realized," she said quietly, "how much I needed this. Not just the rest, but life, normal life." I nodded. "You deserve it, even if it's chaotic." She smiled, small, real. "I think I might be starting to understand what Christmas feels like." The next few Saturdays became routine. Park visits, pizza at Sal's, laughter, arguments over silly things, Mia teaching Claire about dragons and princesses. Claire began to loosen up, asking questions, making mistakes, laughing at them, and somehow becoming part of our little world. Then came the phone call about Thanksgiving. Claire hesitated as she explained it. Annual family dinner. The new CEO would be there. Old traditions, expectations, obligations. She paused. "Would you and Mia want to come with me as my guests?" I looked at her, surprised. "Is that really okay?" Quote, "You'd be saving me from small talk, judgment, questions about my future," she said. "And I'd like it if you were there. For me." Mia jumped up and down. "Yes, please." I nodded slowly. "We'll come." Thanksgiving arrived gray and cold. Mia in her best dress, me in my only suit. Slightly too tight, and definitely out of style. Claire drove us in her car, nerves hidden behind polite smiles, her eyes flicking to the street, the house, and us. The Harrington estate was a sprawling colonial mansion in Connecticut, everything opulent, intimidating, and overwhelming. Inside, it was like stepping into another century. Staff in uniforms, oil paintings, people who radiated old money. I held Mia's hand tightly, bracing for judgment, criticism, anything. Dinner was exactly as awkward as Claire predicted. Conversations felt like chess moves, passive-aggressive comments, veiled criticisms. And yet, through it all, Claire's shoulders stayed slightly lighter, the tension eased by our presence. Mia shone, polite, charming, her honesty piercing the formalities, her laughter genuine. Finally, dessert came, and Richard Harrington, 3 glasses of wine in, demanded answers about Claire's plans. She stood up, calmly, firmly. "Thank you for dinner. It's been lovely, but we're leaving." The room froze. Eyes widened. Forks paused midair. Noah stood immediately, helping Mia from her chair. Claire's eyes met mine, fierce, proud, exhausted, yet unbroken. "I didn't run from the company," she said softly. "I lost it because I refused to compromise myself to satisfy others, and I learned something important. Life isn't about power or wealth or control. It's about being human." On the drive back, Claire looked out the window, jaw clenched. "I'm sorry I involved you in this." "It wasn't selfish," I said. "You needed support. That's what friends do." She paused, then whispered, almost to herself, "Are we friends?" I smiled. "Yeah, I guess we are." Mia, always the wise one, chimed in, "Your dad isn't very nice." "No," I admitted. "My grandpa wasn't nice either," she said. "But Daddy says that doesn't mean you can't be kind." Claire reached over, taking Mia's hand. "Thank you for including us. You made it bearable." I nodded. "Next Christmas you should come to our place." Claire's face softened. "I'd like that." The weeks that followed were a quiet transformation. Claire came over often. We cooked, laughed, and shared stories. She helped Mia with school projects. She showed up unannounced with ice cream when I had a hard day. Slowly, imperceptibly, she became part of our orbit. And in that orbit, I began to see her differently. Not as a CEO, not as a billionaire, not as a contract on paper, but as Claire, human, vulnerable, honest, and trying. For the first time since Elena died, I felt hope, not just for Mia, not just for myself, but for all of us. That even when the world is harsh, complicated, and unfair, there are moments worth holding on to. Moments of laughter, connection, trust, and love. And that Christmas, in our small Queens apartment, with pizza, laughter, and the faint smell of hot chocolate lingering in the air, I realized something. Some things, some choices, some connections, they can't be bought, they can't be calculated, they can't be forced. And maybe, just maybe, they're the most valuable things in the world. The city was quiet that morning, snow still clinging to fire escapes and car roofs, the streets glistening like crystal under pale sunlight. I had promised Mia a Saturday at the park, our usual ritual, but today it felt heavier, different, like the air itself knew this was a turning point. She clutched her small backpack, chattering about the new library books she wanted to read, but I only half listened. My thoughts kept drifting to Claire. Not the CEO, not the billionaire, but Claire, the woman who had chosen honesty over wealth, humanity over power, and somehow let me see the person beneath all of it. We arrived at the park, and Mia ran ahead, her energy contagious. I leaned against the bench, hands in my pockets, and waited. That's when I saw her. Claire, approaching from across the grass, sneakers crunching in the thin snow, hair loose, scarf wrapped around her neck. She paused when she saw me, then smiled. A real smile, the kind that reached her eyes and softened the edges of her face. "Hi," she said, breath visible in the cold air. "Hi," I replied, standing. She glanced at Mia, who had stopped mid-run and was staring at Claire with wide, expectant eyes. "Mia," Claire said, crouching to meet her. "Hi, it's nice to see you again." Mia grinned. "Claire, want to see my new drawing?" Claire's face lit up. "Of course." "Show me." They walked off together toward a bench, Mia animatedly explaining the princesses and dragons that populated her imagination, Claire listening with genuine curiosity, asking questions that revealed a warmth I'd rarely seen before. I watched them, heart tight. This was more than I had hoped for, more than I had imagined possible. Claire wasn't just stepping into our world. She was choosing to belong, even in small, imperfect ways. After a while, I called them over to grab hot chocolate from the little park kiosk. Claire and I walked side by side, the silence comfortable, punctuated by laughter from Mia and the hum of the city around us. "Thank you," Claire said quietly, "for letting me be part of this." "You don't need to thank us," I said. "You're part of it because you want to be." She nodded, eyes searching mine. "I think I'm starting to understand what family really feels like, not what I've read about, or what's expected, or what I can buy. Real family." I smiled softly. It's messy, it's unpredictable, but it's real. We spent the afternoon together, Mia darting from swings to slides, Claire laughing with abandon, the air filled with warmth that had nothing to do with money, nothing to do with contracts, nothing to do with power. As the sun began to dip behind the buildings, Claire and I walked a few steps behind Mia, who was skipping ahead. "Noah," she said, voice low, almost shy, "I need to tell you something." I turned to face her, heart thudding. I've spent my life being everything to everyone. except myself. And being here, seeing you, seeing Mia, it's shown me that some things are more important than control, more important than success, more important than money. And I don't want to lose this. Quote. Her words hit me raw and unpolished, carrying all the weight of someone who had risked everything to be honest. I stepped closer. You won't lose it, I said quietly. We'll figure it out, together. She hesitated, then exhaled slowly. Together, she echoed. We walked home in silence, the kind that doesn't need words, only presence. Claire had arrived at our apartment, and we all went inside, Mia giggling, Claire taking off her scarf, settling in like she belonged. That night, after Mia had gone to bed, Claire and I sat at the small kitchen table, cups of tea warming our hands. The room was quiet, except for the faint hum of the heater. She looked at me, eyes searching mine, and whispered, Noah, I think I'm falling for you. Both of you, really. For this life, this real life. I swallowed, heart racing. Claire, I feel the same. I've been scared of it, but yes, I feel it too. Her hand reached across the table, brushing mine, even with everything. My family, the board, the money, the world. Especially because of everything, I said softly. This isn't about wealth. This isn't about legacy. It's about trust, honesty, and choosing each other. She smiled, small, tearful, relieved. Then we'll take it slow, step by step, one day at a time. I nodded. Slow is good. Slow is perfect. We sat there for a long time, just the two of us, in the warmth of a small apartment that had suddenly become a home. Outside, the city continued, indifferent and sprawling. But inside, we had found something rare and precious: connection, choice, and the courage to be ourselves. Later, I tucked Claire into the guest room for the night. She paused at the door. Thank you, Noah, for not selling out. For showing me there's more to life than contracts and money. For being human. I smiled, feeling something inside me settle. Thank you, Claire, for trusting me. For being brave enough to see it, too. She paused again, her voice barely a whisper. Some promises don't need contracts. Some choices are priceless. I watched her leave the room, and in that moment, I realized she was right. Some things couldn't be bought. Some moments couldn't be negotiated. And some people, some rare, extraordinary people, changed your life simply by showing up, by being honest, and by choosing to belong. Mia's laughter echoed from her room, warm and alive. I leaned back, letting the weight of the last few weeks sink in. $50 million, resignations, boardrooms, contracts. None of it mattered now. What mattered was this: love, trust, honesty, family, real family. And maybe, just maybe, we were finally ready to see what that life could be.